Are you feeling guilty or lacking confidence about dating again? This session will guide you through the process of rediscovering yourself, defining what you want in partnership, and finding the courage to explore dating without the weight of guilt. I'm Melissa Pierce, your host of the Purpose Reimagined event, and today I have a special guest, Debbie Weiss. Debbie's the author of Available As Is, A Midlife Widow's Search for Love. Debbie has walked the challenging path of widowhood and is here to share her insights on dating after the death of a partner, navigating grief, and finding love again. Debbie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Melissa.
All right. Well, let's dig right in. Let's get like a little better understanding of grief and loss. So, what were some of the most challenging aspects for you when you became a widow?
Probably the loneliness. I think that was the hardest for me. My late husband and I had been together for 32 years. We were both introverts and at the time pretty antisocial. And when I lost him, I didn't really have a support network or close friends. So I could probably go days on end without talking to anybody besides my dad.
Mhm. Yeah, loneliness. That's a key theme, I think, for anybody who's lost their person. Yeah, definitely. Um, so, what would you say to a widowed person who feels really overwhelmed by the idea of moving forward in life? What would you tell them?
I mean, in dating specifically, or
Yeah, just thinking about, you kind of have that spark of, well, I know life's different now, and I'm not sure what that looks like, but it's
yeah,
super overwhelming. Um,
it is.
so what would you say to those widowed folks who maybe feel really overwhelmed by the idea of maybe what life looks like?
Well, I'm a former lawyer, and what helps me is to break enormous tasks down into smaller pieces and to tackle things in ways and orders that make sense. I mean, this is so personal. I can only speak for myself, but for me, what I looked at was what's the hardest stuff for me right now on my own. And I started with that. And for me, it was the paperwork and the estate. So I knew where I was financially and administrative stuff, and my home, which was in very bad shape because my husband had cancer and there was a lot of deferred maintenance. And I was just very unhappy there. So I just kind of looked at, going through priorities. You sort of, okay, well, the first thing would be paperwork and home. Then probably my next priority was sort of fitness and eating. Because, when you're used to eating with a partner, suddenly even your meals are fraught. Going to
Hmm.
bed is fraught, right? Because you're alone and you wake up alone. So I understand that sense of being overwhelmed because this impacts like every aspect of your daily life. Um, so for me, it was trying to break this down into manageable components and even trying to get a teeny bit, I wouldn't say of enjoyment out of it, but purpose. I mean, I couldn't be happy, but I could buy those pillows for the couch that I really loved,
Right.
or I could at least figure out, what my finances were. And that took a lot of pressure off.
Hmm.
So I would say
Yeah.
kind of prioritizing and doing things that feel manageable and that give
Hmm.
you a sense of control.
Right. So is it kind of like baby steps too? Like not eating the elephant all at once. What do they say? You eat it one bite at a time, but
Oh my
just
goodness. The
isn't that
prospect of eating
terrible?
an elephant is so
I know.
unappetizing.
I know. It's a terrible,
I
terrible
mean, I would feel
metaphor.
more like DoorDash, it's more
Yeah.
like here's DoorDash, right? Order a few foods that you like.
Hmm.
Start with ordering some nourishing food, and if you discover that's not healthy enough, then start meal planning. But
Right.
kind of gradually moving into things in a way that's gentle,
Yeah.
but incremental and in pieces. Definitely baby steps.
Hmm.
That was the thing that helped me the most. Like, um, I can't stand my living room. Well, I'll get new cushions. Well, I don't like that. Well, okay, I'll remodel it more. And then, some years later I moved, but it was little pieces. It wasn't
Hmm.
beginning with, I'm going to move to a whole new city,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
sometimes what people have told me to do. And it's not, that's not helpful.
Right. And that can make you even more overwhelmed. Yeah, for sure. So you
Exactly.
wrote a book
I did.
about navigating the dating world. So let's get into that. So, someone who's exploring, dating and re-partnership. So, what kind of wisdom could you offer that person considering, dating after the loss of their spouse or life partner? It's a big question.
It is. Here it is. I guess be clear in your mind what you want. Because sometimes we're pressured. I lost my husband at 49 and people were very encouraging. Oh, you'll date again. You're so healthy. You can date. Well, ultimately I did want a partner, but I didn't need people telling me when it was time to think about that. It's your choice. And some women, we choose not to ever be partnered again. And some people just want peace and they want to be on their own, especially maybe raising children. So I think it's very important to be clear what you want also. Do you just want some friends for a little bit? Do you want to just go out and have some fun? Do you want a long-term relationship immediately? Maybe not. Some people can't handle that. They want more of a casual thing. So I think for a start, to know what you want and what feels good for you. And then secondly, to feel good about yourself. Because dating isn't always a super positive experience. And sometimes the people you meet aren't the most kind necessarily, although hopefully you can screen out the unkind. So it's important to really feel good about who you are and confident in yourself to withstand that.
Yeah. I like what you said. It's you kind of have to define what you want it to look like, and kind of throw the rule book or what they are saying you should be doing. You get to define that yourself, whether it's you just want to casually date or you want to really dig in with a new partner or you just want to have fun. You get to decide, and you get to change your mind too.
You do.
Right?
Yeah. This isn't a legal contract. This isn't in writing. You get to say, oh, I really do want something more serious. You get to say, I hate the whole thing. I don't want to do it for a while. Or you get to say, I just want to go out and have some drinks and have some fun. It's all up to you.
Yeah. Kind of you're in the driver's seat. This is your life, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, how do you know, or how would one know when they're ready to start dating again?
Well, a few things. I've been thinking about that recently because I'm doing a sheet about that. I would say there's a few things. One, you need to feel good about yourself. I meet so many women, widowed, not women, say, well, when I lose 10 pounds and I get the gray out of my hair and then I'll date, you look fine. For the right person, you look fine. I see plenty of people who find love later in life and they are unremarkable, normal looking people. What makes them stand out generally is that they are kinder, they are open, and they have better personalities.
Yeah.
So I would say, feel good about you. Widowhood is terrible, but one thing it does mean is you've been through something terrible and you're strong. And you should feel proud and good of yourself about that. And I don't think we hear that enough.
Right.
So I would say that's the first thing. Then the second thing is honestly look at your mental state. If you're still really having trouble with your loss, I had PTSD after my loss with my husband had cancer and denial, or you have insomnia, or you have terrible guilt. I had a lot of issues with guilt. Then I think therapy is appropriate, and leading a gentle life with good friends and focusing on your physical and mental health is more important than dating. So I think you also need to have gone through the really, really tough stuff and be sort of open and curious about looking around, not still, really dealing with the nitty gritty of your loss. So there's two. And the other thing I would recommend off the top of my head is have a full life already. People focus on dating so much, but I think sometimes what's really important is connection, friends, groups. For me, I realized I didn't like being alone on the weekends. That was so hard for me. But dating wasn't the answer because that wasn't necessarily yielding people I liked. Whereas I could join hiking groups and writing groups and meet good people and have great things to do and have a sense of purpose.
Right.
So I would also say, look at making your life fuller with connection in other ways besides dating, because you'll have perspective. If your life feels full, whether some schmuck or not is worthwhile becomes far less important, and you can look at this with humor. And let's add for that last. have a sense of humor about this. At least as a woman, I had to meet all these middle-aged guys who'd been on their own, and God knows I could tell why. You need to have a sense of humor about this, really. Just have some perspective and humor.
Oh, yeah.
Don't take it seriously. Don't think it's your fault. Just,
Right.
I really think it's appropriate to just look at this with a sense of perspective.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Having a sense of humor is key for sure. For sure. So maybe we touched on this, or maybe you can touch on it a little more. But what do you think some common challenges or misconceptions about dating as a widow or widower? Because there are men who are going to be watching this presentation. So common challenges or misconceptions.
Well, I can speak to being a widow. I think
Mhm.
things are different for men in the patriarchy in general.
Mhm.
As a widow, I would think men were afraid that I would be needy, that I'd been, my husband and I were very close. He did everything for me. So I think they thought maybe I was looking for somebody else. Maybe they didn't understand that having been in that situation, and I was going to make sure I was never in that situation again. I was going to know where the finances are. And if I can't fix things myself, have someone who could. So it was a conception of being needy, and definitely an issue of being, what do I want to say? A matter of being dumb. I seem to think they seem to think I needed help with basic stuff.
Mm.
I was still a lawyer. And one of my favorite things I said, and when I was writing, is, I might be a widow, but I'm not a moron. So I got a sense that they seemed to think they could be sort of patronizing or a little superior. I don't think so. So I definitely, the misconceptions were neediness, a level of naivete.
Mhm.
Some guys, as a homeowner, like, well, some guy's going to steal all your stuff. It's like, some guy's going to, I wouldn't, but it's like, yeah. So the baseline here is someone who tries to take my sports car. I mean, really, my baseline's Bernie Madoff. I mean, that was kind of ridiculous.
Mm.
And then I guess the third level was that, we'd be looking for something so much, like you're out to get married again. Somehow it was the idea that being a widowed person, we're trying to replicate a marriage as opposed to just kind of dipping your toe in the water and
Mhm.
looking, be hyper serious about commitment or something, which again wasn't the case.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a misconception about, well, I think it does happen too, about being taken advantage of because you are in this kind of vulnerable state. Um, so, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe that's not a misconception. Maybe
Maybe
that's
it is
true.
in some
Yeah.
ways, maybe emotionally,
Hmm.
I guess you do have to be very careful.
Yeah. Yeah. And earlier you touched on guilt, like that feeling of guilt. That's real.
Yeah, that's real.
Um, So, how can widowed people embrace new relationships without feeling like they're betraying their their spouse who died?
I had a lot of guilt about that because, he was gone. I could go on to have a good life and he couldn't. And one thing I think is to know that a partner who loves you would want you to go on and have a good life.
Mhm.
One thing is that, your partner who loved you doesn't want you to be lonely or unhappy for the rest of your life. That would be heartbreaking.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing is that, the idea, of course, is that we can love more than one person in different ways, in the sense that just because you go on to have a good partnership after losing a spouse doesn't mean you love your spouse any
Right.
less. It means, you value your life, you want to move forward. It's almost a little bit of a tribute in that the things you've learned in your marriage, you can carry forward on into your life to make your second partnership good, and the lessons you've learned from before. You can have a wisdom from that, right? That you're sharing. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, so I think those things very much that, one, your partner doesn't, your late spouse doesn't want you to be miserable. And two, they can always be in your heart and always be a part of you. And you can carry those lessons forward.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. And I also want to touch on something you and I have talked about off camera or off, just between you and I, but I think
Yeah.
it's really, really important to talk about the the loss of touch, the physical touch, whether it's hugging, kissing, sex, whatever. Let's talk about like what are some healthy ways to navigate. We can call it sexual bereavement, or just that that loss of touch. What are some healthy ways to navigate that and reconnect with intimacy? I guess. Yeah.
Well, that's a hard one because I mean, for one thing is I think women, we feel shame, right?
Mhm.
For a lot of women our generation, first we're brought up with shame in general for having needs, right? Good girl versus bad girl,
Mhm.
that type of thing. And then the shame of having the feeling that loss of companionship, of touch, after being widowed, like we're supposed to not have those needs anymore. And I think just the most important thing is to know it's perfectly normal. It's fine. It's real.
Mhm.
Don't feel bad.
Yeah.
What to do about it, I don't know. People say get massages or something. I didn't find that terribly helpful.
Mhm.
I would say mainly just to know it's a normal thing, that it's nothing to feel guilt or shame over. Hopefully, it's something you can talk about with your girlfriends. Maybe that's
Yeah.
where Widows Group is useful
Mhm.
because we've been there. But it's a perfectly normal thing. And I think mainly just not feeling any shame or guilt is fine. And then dealing with it however one sees fit. I mean, some people do friends with benefits before they're
Mhm.
ready for something emotionally. I mean, I really can't comment on that. It's so personal. But I think mainly it's a matter of doing what you need, that isn't harmful to you, but without any shame or guilt, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there should be no place for shame in this
Right.
in this experience at all,
Right.
because we're all just trying to do our best to feel better. So, yeah.
Right, exactly, and we're gonna have
Mhm.
all these emotions, and some of them are
Mhm.
crazy. I mean, I've had anger when I lost my husband, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't wanna feel angry with him, but
Mhm.
there it was, and, had to work with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just let those feelings move through you. You gotta process them, and yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Grief therapy is always good.
Oh, yes. I had, my grief counselor because I was, the lack of touch was an issue, and she suggested that I find a trusted male friend and just ask them just to hold me.
There you go.
I
Yeah,
never did it because it felt weird to me, but I think that's something that if you have somebody like that in your life, um, just to feel that,
yeah.
being held, that touch. So, um, like, could you let's on the dating scene, could you share some practical steps for building some confidence when you're considering dating? Because as we know, the confidence and the self-esteem takes a huge hit. So how do you think folks could kind of maybe look at building their confidence or rebuilding their confidence when they're
Well,
thinking about
one thing
dating?
I would say is to socialize in other ways.
Mhm.
Have girlfriends, go out, have some fun with people when it's not a dating situation. I know I joined hiking groups and I met men and women. Um, and it was nice because we weren't all, dating or anything, but I got a sense of being in a co ed setting and functioning perfectly well. And so I would say looking for other things, drawing. I took a drawing class recently. Just being in co ed settings with people and seeing that you're doing great.
Mhm.
Um, Secondly, I think it's to understand that people go, "Oh God, I'm dating so much," and it's like, not really. You can pick who you want to meet. You can screen whoever you want to screen. You can have a short conversation with them before you meet to make sure they seem sane, and then you can meet them for coffee or a drink. I think coffee's a little better. You meet in daylight hours, someplace close, make it an hour, hour and a half. You can even start off by saying, this is great, but, in an hour and a half, I have a Zoom call. So I've got to be, I've
Mhm.
got a dentist appointment, whatever. You can make this a very controlled, limited amount of time and effort. So it isn't this huge, overwhelming thing. If you just meet a guy and he says, "Oh, that's great. We're going to go for this 8-course meal." No, no, no. Let's meet for coffee first. Or, somebody who says, "Let's meet at a hotel," get rid of them immediately.
Mhm.
I think one of the most important things is to screen and also follow your instincts. I think a lot of the time as women, we're taught to be so conciliatory, we don't follow our instincts. But if someone's contacting you and they seem a little off, just get rid of them. Don't worry about it. There's plenty of other people. Follow your instincts, and that will help you gain more confidence as you learn to rely on yourself more.
Mm. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's and kind of one last question. So, if you have any like insider tips or resources that you might recommend for those who are starting to think about dating, like any particular resource or something you thought was really helpful that you'd want to share with this
Well, one thing
audience.
you can do, I don't know if it's helpful or not, is you can try to do the most lurky mode you can on a website. I went on there and I put up professional pictures and did all this, but you can kind of go on there without a photo and all, and you won't get contacted, but you can kind of see what's out there before you start. Um, I think is helpful. Talking to other people who've dated more than you is helpful, and your divorced friends can help you. I had a lot more divorced friends than widowed friends, but they'd been out there more, they dated more, and they could be helpful to me. Um, Another resource, I did professional photos for my dating site pictures, and I know that's weird,
That's
but
a
it
great
made me
idea.
feel more confident because I knew I looked how I wanted to. I was presenting myself as I wished to. We'll ignore the one guy who said, "Couldn't you do something sexy?" It's like, no, you're gone. But I found that very helpful in terms of setting up a profile that I thought was my best shot. I'm sure there are some people who can help you set up your profiles. I don't know that I'd pay someone for that. But
Yeah.
you can rely on your friends and people who have done it more. And again, lurk a little. Look at some profiles you like. See the men who are there, and above all, screen. Again, you're going to get a ton of message. Hey, beautiful. I just saw this and I know you're the love of my life. No, this is being sent to a bazillion people.
Mm-hmm.
So, huge grain of salt.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I love the idea of professional photos. That's really good. Yeah, that's a great tip. So as we wrap up, I want to thank you, Debbie, for being so open and generous with your story and your insights. And so before we close, do you have any parting advice or words of encouragement for those who might be a little hesitant or nervous about dating again after loss?
Okay. It took me about 5 years after my loss to find my second life partner, but we've been together 6 years now. And it was just a matter of treating this like a job with persistence, going through new people, screening meticulously, and not putting a lot of effort into texting and things. Meet as quickly as you can after a brief phone call. You can do this efficiently. I mean, it's bad advice, former lawyer. But on the other side, please don't give up on hope, because I did meet somebody at a low point when after 5 years when I didn't think it was possible. So it is possible.
Yes. Yeah. There's always hope. That's great advice. And everybody should be reading your book. I've read it twice. It's
Oh, thank
amazing.
you.
Available as is by Debbie Weiss. So for everyone watching, make sure to check out the resources that Debbie mentioned and the practical steps that she shared to help you on your journey toward finding new love and companionship. Thank you for joining us, Debbie. And thank you, everyone watching. I hope this session has given you some guidance to take those next steps with some courage and some hope.